Tuesday, August 29th, 2023, AGNDD, Intellireport topic, list of Ponzi schemes. Please pardon any visual and informational inaccuracies in this entirely AI-generated Wikipedia video article.
In the late 19th century, a number of people orchestrated Ponzi schemes that resulted in substantial financial losses. These individuals include Jacob Young, William Abrams, Nancy Clem, Adele Spitzer, Johann Baptist Placht, and Sarah Howe. Wendy Gamber argues that Jacob Young, William Abrams, and Nancy Clem ran the first ever Ponzi scheme as described in her book, The Notorious Mrs. Clem, Murder and Money in the Gilded Age. In Munich, Germany, Adele Spitzer founded the Spitzersche Private Bank in 1869, offering a 10% monthly interest rate. The scheme eventually collapsed in 1872, becoming the largest fraud case in 19th century Bavaria. Johann Baptist Placht and Sarah Howe were both fraudsters who ran Ponzi schemes in the late 19th century. Placht operated in Vienna from 1872 to 1873, while Howe targeted unmarried women with her savings bank called Ladies Deposit Company in Boston in 1878. Howe promised high interest rates but had no actual charity backing her claims. She managed to attract over 1,200 clients and $500,000 in deposits before being exposed as a fraud. Howe served 3 years in prison and later engaged in other fraudulent activities before becoming a fortune teller until her death in 1892. In 1899, William 520% Miller operated the Franklin Syndicate in Brooklyn, New York, offering a 10% weekly interest rate. Miller's scheme shared similarities with Charles Ponzi's later infamous scheme, such as customers reinvesting their earnings. Miller defrauded investors of $1 million and was sentenced to 10 years in jail. After being pardoned, he opened a grocery store on Long Island. During the Ponzi investigation, Miller was interviewed and his scheme was found to be remarkably similar, although Ponzi's scheme gained more notoriety for its larger amount of money involved. Charles Ponzi became well known in 1920 due to his deceitful investment plan, which is now referred to as the Ponzi scheme. He made enticing promises to investors, claiming that he could double their money within 90 days by purchasing and reselling international postal reply coupons. However, in reality, he was using the funds from new investors to pay off the initial ones. In a span of just 7 months, Ponzi managed to amass over $8 million from approximately 30,000 investors before the scheme inevitably collapsed. As a consequence, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison, subsequently deported, and spent the remainder of his life endeavoring to compensate for the losses endured by his victims. Ivar Kreuger, a Swedish businessman nicknamed the Match King, operated a Ponzi scheme by deceiving investors with false claims of high profits and the growth of his match monopolies. However, the scheme eventually collapsed in the 1930s, leading Kreuger to commit suicide. Equity funding refers to the process of raising capital for a business by selling shares of ownership to investors. This type of funding allows businesses to obtain funds without incurring debt. In return for their investment, shareholders receive a portion of the company's profits and have a say in its decision-making process. Equity funding can be obtained through various sources, such as venture capitalists, angel investors, or through public offerings on stock exchanges. In the 1980s, several Ponzi schemes were uncovered around the world. Jean-Pierre Van Rossum operated a stock market investment company in Belgium. Dona Branca ran a scheme in Portugal. Adrian Nieuwood ran a fraudulent beauty product scheme in South Africa. Diamond Mortgage Company and A.J. Obi defrauded investors in Michigan. J. David & Company operated a Ponzi scheme in San Diego. Ron Rewald ran a fraudulent investment firm in Hawaii. Reed Slatkin conducted a large Ponzi scheme in the United States. Tenka Ika no Kai was a pyramid scheme in Japan. These schemes defrauded investors of millions of dollars and led to legal action and imprisonment for those involved. The following text describes various notable Ponzi schemes that took place in different countries. These schemes revolved around companies that made false promises of high returns to investors, ultimately engaging in fraudulent activities. Some of the mentioned schemes include MMM in Russia, Caritas in Romania, Anubhav Teak Plantations in India, Towers Financial Corporation in the United States, European Kings Club in Switzerland, Bennett Funding Group in the United States, Greater Ministries International in Florida, and pyramid schemes in Albania. Unfortunately, these schemes led to substantial financial losses for the investors involved. In the year 2001, Ponzi schemes in Haiti deceived investors and managed to swindle over $240 million. This amount is equivalent to 60% of the government budget of the country. Similarly, in Costa Rica, the Villalobos brothers orchestrated a Ponzi scheme that successfully collected at least $400 million from investors in America, Canada, and Costa Rica. Meanwhile, Mutual Benefits Company, located in Florida, operated a Ponzi scheme that reached a staggering $1 billion. Additionally, Raymond James was fined a sum of $6.9 million for their failure to supervise a broker involved in a Ponzi scheme. Furthermore, other Ponzi schemes were discovered in the United States, Malaysia, and Australia. Several individuals and companies were involved in Ponzi schemes in the early 2010s. Trevor Cook of Minnesota was sentenced to 25 years in prison for his involvement in the Oxford Group, which took in $194 million. TZVI Erez from Toronto scammed creditors out of $27 million and $9 million in separate print investment schemes. Edward A. Allen and David L. Olson were accused of running a Ponzi scheme that raised $14.8 million. Matt Jennings and his cohorts were accused of stealing over $53 million from investors. Norman Adey, Wendell Jacobson and his son Alan, Joseph Blimline, and Paul Burks and Zeke Rewards were also involved in Ponzi schemes during this time. In August 2023, Metaverse Foreign Exchange, abbreviated as MTFE, was revealed as a Ponzi scheme that deceived investors in Africa and South Asia, resulting in a loss of over $1 billion. The scheme purported to be a trading platform utilizing artificial intelligence bots for cryptocurrency trading, but in reality, no actual trades were conducted. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka had previously cautioned that it operated as a pyramid scheme. Upon the collapse of the scheme, all accounts displayed fabricated negative balances. Other notable Ponzi schemes involving smaller amounts of money include Sarah Howe's Ladies Deposit Scheme in 1880, a scheme in Ohio in 2000 that collected over $26 million without selling any product or service, Bill Hickman Sr. and Jr.'s scheme in Oklahoma that defrauded over $8 million, Mark Drucker's scheme in 2004 that promised guaranteed returns of up to 50%, John C. Jeffers' scheme in California that promised profits of up to 4,000%, Edmundo Rubi's scheme in San Diego that bilked investors out of over $24 million, the Forum Filatelico and Afinsa Bienes tangible scheme in Spain that affected 250,000 investors. These two books, The Ponzi Scheme Puzzle by Tamar Frankel and Ponzi's Scheme by Mitchell Zuckoff, offer historical and analytical accounts of Ponzi schemes. Frankel's book explores the motivations and tactics of con artists and their victims, while Zuckoff's book delves into the true story of Charles Ponzi, the originator of the Ponzi scheme. Both books provide insights into the workings and impact of these fraudulent investment schemes. In conclusion, the 19th century saw the rise of several notorious Ponzi schemes, including those run by Jacob Young, William Abrams, Nancy Clem, Adele Spitzer, Johann Baptist Placht, and Sarah Howe. These fraudsters deceived countless individuals and amassed significant sums of money before facing the consequences of their actions.